Maverick News. The world is watching. In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
I mean, there needs to be a massive realignment in our government, and I don't know that anybody could do it besides Trump, unless he has a vice president, Robert Kennedy, which would be delicious. I mean, that would be beautiful.
I was just going to say that. I think Kennedy's the one who'll drain the swamp. And if Kennedy doesn't win and Trump does win, I hope that Trump will bring Kennedy in as his attorney general.
Yes.
Could you imagine another Robert Kennedy sitting in the Justice Department at a time like this? Wow.
Laurie, look, I think RFK has been a rebel in terms of his positions against his family's, frankly, sandbag, sort of typical, progressive Democrat rote, and the fact that they would come out again and denounce him for that commercial in the Super Bowl, I thought was that tells you all you need to know about them. They're not even, they say it's the Democrats are no longer the party of Kennedy. Well, the Kennedy family is no longer the family of John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, who would have been, would have certainly supported, a family member who's whatever you may disagree with him on certain things, but he is a righteous man and he's crusading for what's right. And he's thoughtful and he is studied and he's learned. I mean, this is a great man, and he's running a fabulous campaign that is grassroots, that is inclusive. He's accessible. He's a genuine human being, and I think he would be great as something like the Secretary of State. But as far as I don't think he has like the viciousness in him that, and I hate to say it, I mean vicious for justice in the sense that these people need to be dealt with in a very rough way.
Do you think he lacks that ruthless gene that his father had when he was Attorney General?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think even his father would have been like, well, look what they did to him. I mean, I think he, as ruthless as they say he was, he didn't realize how far they would go and how vicious and psychopathological they were and are. And they're even worse in many ways than that era of maniacs who thought, well, we just need to kill this guy, and did. But I don't think I think Robert Kennedy's far more. He doesn't have any illusions, that's for sure. But I think he wants to be, and righteously should not have to get dirty going after these scum. I think he would be a great Secretary of State and a diplomat, in other words. I mean, for his views on foreign policy and his understanding is unparalleled of any person I've seen running for president in a generation.
That's interesting. Really, you're the first person I've heard suggest him for Secretary of State. I've had this idea in my head that he's got to be Attorney General, of course, because I want that swamp drained, and he's the best prosecutor I could think of.
Yeah, I mean, he was never a prosecutor. He prosecuted cases and is the only person running for president in a long time who was actually a honest to God hardball litigator, who's taken on environmental cases and won them against great odds, and he knows the law inside out. But I think it's going to require a certain level of, you need that guy who's willing to get bloody and dirty and take these people out, because they're going to throw everything they can up in their defense. But I think the Kennedy name in the world still holds, I think, if maybe not in the Democrat Party anymore, but certainly around the world, I think people still remember who John F. Kennedy was on some level. And I think he would be such a great emissary for our country around the world, and could really heal. Because I think he would be taken more seriously as an honest, good faith broker than our own government at this point, and anybody in it at this point, who's associated with the State Department or the regime, I guess you could call it. Certainly not Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton, John Kerry. My fear is that unfortunately, he's taken so many radical positions environmentally, and he's said some radical things, which I believe when he sort of recanted, but he said, look, I've rethought these positions. I don't hold that position. I don't think Republicans are terrorists that need to be, dealt with the capital punishment. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
look, I mean, when you're passionate about something, sometimes you make unfortunate statements. But I mean, overall, though, the things he said have been so thoughtful, and his understanding of foreign policy is unparalleled. I don't, without qualification, I say that, and I think he could really, and he's certainly against wars. I mean, he's certainly on that, and that's where he perfectly aligns, I think, with Donald Trump on the domestic
Indeed.
side. And I just would hope Donald Trump isn't surrounded by, because I've seen a lot of them beat up on Bobby Kennedy about, he's not he's just a crazy leftist, who happens to agree with us on vaccines and whatever. That's absurd. And if Donald Trump surrounds himself with those people, it's going to be another failed administration. But if he brings in a Bobby Kennedy, a Secretary of State, or even like ambassador to the world at large, anything, just a role in shaping foreign policy, I mean, that would be a brilliant move, and it would absolutely serve our country in ways, and it would enable Bobby Kennedy, if he wanted to, and to run for president again in 2028 and take over the to maybe, I don't know, I it's sad. I thought he would reform the Democrat Party, that it had a chance if he were to run, that you would see all the old Kennedy Democrats, but I guess they're all dead now, and the party is really just a criminally corrupt organization, unfortunately, and I think it's almost beyond repair.
Do you think that ad was the right strategy? I can't.
Yes.
I can't make up my mind on that, because it's just like they're using the name. He's kind of riding on the name, but there's not a lot of substance there. But I guess if you just want to get elected,
you mean in the ad itself?
Yeah, that's
The Super Bowl ad. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. It's been stuck in my head ever since.
No, I
Kennedy
love that. First
me.
of all, it's like, let's return to politics where it's not just some like gloom and doom, horrible, ridiculous, absurd attack on your opponent, or glossing over, I mean, some of the ads for Biden, you'd think, gee, who are you? I'm sorry, who is this you're talking about? And or any of them who run on these pie in the sky. I mean, I think it was just a throwback to a simpler time, and frankly, Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, RFK Jr. lives up to the highest aspirations of the Kennedys. So if anybody should be able to run an ad like that isn't necessarily substantive, but reminds people that, hey, he is definitely his uncle's nephew and his father's son in every respect. And I mean, I think people who attacked it, his own family members, are clueless and very cold people.
But didn't Trump meet with, just in the last week, with Tulsi Gabbard and discuss?
Did he?
Yeah,
Did they actually meet?
That's what I read.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it wouldn't.
I know
surprise
he's been
me
putting
if he
out
chose her.
feelers in that direction to
Well,
Tulsi.
I can tell you, it's not going to be Nikki Haley. That's for sure.
Oh, hell no.
We could, do the vice presidential sweepstakes. I think Tulsi would be an excellent choice. I mean, I think she brings over a lot of independent-minded people. And I don't see anything. I mean, she had a questionable gun control position for a number of years, but I think I mean, the deep state, like there's so many liberals, honest to God liberals, old school liberals that a number that I've known who were maybe for gun control measures back in like the 80s, but since they've seen the growth of the deep state's tentacles and like how crazy, I mean, and ruthless and power mad these people are, they've said, you know what, I was for gun control once, but no way, not anymore. We cannot disarm the citizenry, or we will be an absolutely fascist dictatorship almost overnight.
And they're the ones that have to live in crime-ridden, Democrat-run cities.
Yes.
That'll change your mind on gun control when you realize that you're unarmed and a sitting duck.
Well, they're the same people who are targeting you for your possession of firearms while they're not prosecuting people and letting criminals, real honest to God, violent criminals, just walk away. Yep. And decriminalizing theft on a level that they're just going in and looting entire stores, which only, of course, harms the community, because now you have these deserts where there's no stores anymore, and you can't get a CVS or a Walmart or anything, or a Walgreens or anything to open up, because why would they? They just get looted every time, and it's sad. I mean, it's the Soros DAs. It's a real thing. It's not some sort of fiction created by Republicans or conservatives. It's the things they've done. I mean, and they had to remove. I mean, look, in San Francisco, they removed that guy. I forget his name, but I mean, my God, that's not exactly a Republican electorate, and they got rid of him. So I mean, it's there's got to be such. It's these people have been betting sort of quietly, or at least under the radar, embedding themselves insinuating themselves into so many critical institutions, and like now it's all coming to a head, and it's like, whoa, I mean, the scope and scale of it is daunting for any person, and it's going to take a generation. It's not going to happen in one administration. It's, as John F. Kennedy said, it may not happen in the first 100 days or 1,000 days, or even the lifetime of this administration, or even our lifetimes. But we've got to take the first
But
steps.
let us begin.
Let us begin. Yes. Amen.
You know what I really liked about the Super Bowl ad that Kennedy did? It was so refreshing, wasn't it, to see a political ad that didn't attack. It wasn't a negative ad. It didn't attack the other guys. It wasn't about who we're against. It was just about who we're for. Kennedy,
it reminded
Kennedy,
us
Kennedy,
you can have a politician running who's genuinely not some crooked, or sort of flawed character, who actually is a really good guy and can get away genuinely with running an ad like that. And as I said, should be able to run that. I can't believe a single family member came out, and it's like, my God, attacked by his own family. Like, these people are demented.
It was the Shrivers this time. Not the Kennedys, but the Shriver Kennedys. And it was a dishonest attack because Bobby Shriver said, my mother, Eunice Kennedy, would not have approved of her image being used because of his stance on vaccines. And, I've studied the presidency of John F. Kennedy for 40 years, and I love Eunice Kennedy Shriver. She was for safe and effective vaccines.
That's right, yeah. And you know what?
And that's all that Bobby Kennedy Jr. advocates for. There's no difference.
Yeah, for them, blood was thicker than a Pfizer shot. I'll tell you that right now. For sure.
Arguably, a Pfizer shot will make your blood thick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, well, blood before the Pfizer shot's thicker than the shot, I guess. But no, I absolutely. The Kennedys were loyal to their own family. I mean, my God,
always.
And Sergeant Shriver,
until now,
I think would be like, what are you saying? Look, you can call him up personally, but you don't go out publicly and take on and denounce a family member. That's laughable. And these people clearly have not read his books or the science, or looked at the actual science surrounding vaccines, because he's 100% right. And Bobby Kennedy's Fauci book, it's almost more footnotes than it is book. I mean, honestly, everything is as meticulously detailed. You cannot, he's done a great public service alone on that front.
And the media, of course, they lie and they stress the family members who don't agree with Kennedy, but they never talk about the ones who do. Anthony Shriver is actually one of Bobby's greatest supporters. Just last week, he was out there raising money for our campaign, and they never mention him. They only want to talk about the ones who don't like him.
He was in Philadelphia, I believe, when he went independent, because I thought I saw that. Yeah, that's great.
You were there last October?
Sure was, yes.
That's right. That's right.
Historic day, I think. See the namesake of one of the two, best known Kennedys who lost their lives in the midst of public service. John F. Kennedy Jr. I just had Damon Issei on my show this past week, who wrote the book JFK Jr. Marked for Death, and I think the evidence indicates he was assassinated. He was assassinated. Absolutely. I mean, the plane did a vertical drop from there was no death spin. Damon Issei is a 40-year flight instructor and pilot who actually was also a fisherman on those waters in Martha's Vineyard. And he said at first he just thought, oh, well, didn't think anything of it, thought, okay, I guess he just got, caught up and lost it. And then he began studying it as a pilot and said, absolutely not. He was a very, very proficient pilot. The amount of training and flight time he had was well beyond what anybody would need. He passed every test with above average scores, and that that the plane itself would never, you don't just dump into the ocean like that. And the way the angle of attack that it went into the ocean means it was straight in, almost at a negative angle, at such speed. It was like something he said 4,000 feet per second or something. That
it was a nosedive.
It was not a controlled, the way they said he crashed was he lost visual cues, and then he just crashed in the ocean. You don't crash into the ocean when you lose visual cues at a straight vertical drop, and with the tail section having been separated from the plane. There was a bomb that went off in that plane, and there were numerous witnesses who said they saw it explode in the air, and went because it was traveling in a straight line, and it literally just dropped and went straight into the ocean. And that the only thing that, as Damon said, that causes that is a loss of the tail section of the aircraft. So no, he was murdered. I have no doubt. And I had my questions for years, but after looking at the evidence, and then just the fact that the federal government immediately seized control of the search. They had, there were so many weird things. I mean, the bodies were cremated, I guess, and buried at sea. There was no, and the family, of course. I mean, Ted Kennedy. I mean, he learned back in '68. You keep your mouth shut. You don't cross us. And
well, Ted Kennedy almost died in a plane crash himself in 1964.
Yeah, broke his back. Yep.
Messed up his back for life. The other passengers died.
I think that was also no accident, and I think that sent a
Often
message.
Wondered.
That sent a message to him that I'm not gonna commit suicide essentially by crossing these people who will kill me if I do. And I've seen what was done to his brothers. I mean, why wouldn't he have taken that position? It's just out of defensiveness to him, his family. But that's why what makes Robert Kennedy Jr. such a brave soul, and why the denial of his Secret Service protection is a disgusting outrage that alone should have Joe Biden, frankly, in the dock as a criminal.
It's so vindictive. It's evil.
It's malicious beyond belief.
I think all three of us are old enough to remember the 1980 campaign when Ted Kennedy challenged the sitting president, Jimmy Carter, of his own party. And, Teddy and Jimmy Carter always had a very contentious relationship. They didn't get along. Let's be honest. They hated each other. But President Carter, to his credit, he actually used the power of the presidential pen to give Secret Service protection to Ted Kennedy 2 months before Teddy even announced his campaign back in September of '79. Teddy announced in November, about a year before the election. And it was just the right and decent thing to do for a guy named Kennedy. And Joe Biden isn't even capable of that.
No. Joe Biden he embodies every single bad, odious trait of a politician you can imagine. He is an insufferable blowhard, an egotistical demagogue. He is a liar.
Don't forget a liar.
No, absolutely. A lies like he breathes.
Like a rug.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've known this man for coming up on 40 years since I first shook his hand. They say, kind of jokingly, because Trump has all the Make America Great Again hats. Where are the Biden hats? And I have one of those foam, truckers caps, Delaware's Joe Biden, and I had him sign it. It was June 5th or June 8th, 1984. I have the tickets. It was his Senate campaign kickoff, and a family friend said, knew I was becoming very interested in politics, although I was a big Reagan guy. And then I went to his campaign kickoff. I'd seen him in church on Sunday, every Sunday, or roughly, and then eventually went to school with Bo and Hunt and got to know them a lot better. But mainly I studied Joe Biden right from the outset. And I was not one to jump on with a Democrat. I mean, but I was I was open. I was thinking, well, maybe I'll see what he's about. I studied his voting record and the way in various sort of extracts that I'd found at the time, like in magazines, and it was, there was no internet, obviously. And I realized this man is he's been wrong on a lot of issues, and voted his voting record is one of an sort of unrepentant leftist, not a liberal, a leftist, and a power mad big government guy, but also mainly just an egomaniac, a blowhard. And I began within I think it was probably 2 weeks after his campaign kickoff that summer, I went over to John Burris, the Republican candidate, and began worked stuffed envelopes every single day, all day, did lit drops, and worked for him a lot. His campaign and the Reagan campaign that summer, I worked tirelessly. And ever since I've said, God help us if he ever would ascend to the presidency. I thought the American political system is smart because it was always spit out of the bottom of the Democrat primary process.
He was always a loser. He never got
was,
past the
yeah.
first or second primary. I remember.
And
I covered his 1988 campaign when he was, shooed out of the race for being a plagiarist and a liar.
Oh yeah, it was
I
awful.
thought that was the end of his political
and
career.
when you
Boy,
talk
was
about-
I wrong.
Yeah, you talk about well, yeah, he's like the sticky stench that won't go away. And God, we've been afflicted with him in Delaware. I mean, it just was the bane of my existence. I mean, for years, but especially when he was ramping up this drug war BS and his chest thumping, trying to out Law and Order, what he thinks the Republicans, how whatever the drug war stuff. And he's. I think the system did get it right. I mean, I think the American people didn't elect him. I think that was they stole the presidency. They rigged it in every way possible. Whether you agree that there was vote fraud or not, they rigged it in terms of the money that was poured in by Zuckerberg and the media being 100% absolutely contemptuous towards Donald Trump and pumping up Joe Biden, letting him get away with never leaving his basement practically.
Yep,
not running a
COVID,
real
the mail-in
campaign.
ballots,
All of it, yeah.
the New York Post story that was suppressed right before the election.
Of all the people to go that far to do it for Biden is just like is a sin against this country, and we're seeing the results because he is not up to the job. Even outside of being demented, even if he were of sound mind, he would still not be up to the job because his character is so corroded and ill. Like he could not stand that spotlight. You could watch his withdrawal in 1987, at the speech that he gave in it wasn't the Senate caucus room, but it was a similar Senate hearing room.
I remember.
And it was probably the single most honest or candid remarks he's ever given in his life. He said, "I was not an activist," and basically just made lies of everything he's ever said since about being a civil rights activist. I desegregated the charcoal pit. Yeah, sure you did, Joe.
What?
The charcoal pit being this like diner style restaurant that all the kids go to in school to get the big Sunday floats and and I run into Beau Biden there all the time. It's like an institution. Really good. If you're ever in Wilmington, Delaware, go to the charcoal pit. They have great greasy burgers and milkshakes, and it's like just
yum.
like it was in the 50s.
So, Tyler, how do you restore the confidence in the system? Because I mean, even in the chat, I'm seeing people say, "I don't think there even will be another presidential election this year." People have lost faith in the whole thing. How do you? When people don't believe, when 50% of the population, one way or the other, is going to ultimately not believe the outcome of the election, how do you even have a democracy anymore? And how do you get it back?
Wow. Well, we have a republic, not a democracy. So I would, and that's
Right.
something I think we've lost too much because they want us to be a mobocracy in a sense, where it's just majority rules and bash down the other side, that there aren't essential human and civil rights and constitutional rights that nobody can take away from you, and those are respected, and not least being rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and justice, equal justice before the law, equal protection of the laws, due process, all these things that have been trashed to no end by the people who purport to be the great masterminds of our age, who, Donald Trump is just some ruffian who's coming and is going to upset the apple cart.
Good.
I'll tell you,
That's
no,
what
I
a lot
agree.
of us
That's
voted
right.
for.
But Rick, you asked the multi-million dollar question, the $355 million question, which is, how do you restore? And it's going to, the
There's
wounds,
no confidence left in the system.
Yeah, no, there isn't, and maybe there shouldn't be, because the system. I mean, until the system gets right, hey, listen, people need to frankly check out of it, because that's the only way you're going to have a normal life and survive. But we need to at least beat back, because it's beyond. I mean, at this point, it's not even a matter of the system isn't living up to its ideals. It's corrupted, and it's dangerous, and it's criminal. So we need to at least start by cleaning up the corruption to the extent we can, and getting these people the hell out of there. And even if we have, look, I'd rather leave the positions vacant than some of the people that inhabit them now. And I think we find that if we just
But see,
shut
even
down
this kind of conversation makes it even worse, because people, I hear it all the time, not just you, but a lot of people, maybe the majority of people. And it's to the point where when we saw this, we're seeing this showdown at the border in Texas, Mexico, and the funding for, the defense tied to what happens at the border, and these states now aligned against the federal government, talk of maybe even a a divorce
Yeah,
between the
secession
states,
in Texas,
which
right?
could be civil war. I think we're a ways off from that, hopefully, but how,
Yeah.
what
Well,
what are we going to do?
well, the thing is, I mean, people say, well, there could be a civil war. I mean, we're in a civil war. It's just not hot yet. I mean, our government is literally been taken over by people who don't represent the people and are lawless and criminal and self-dealing, and they are waging a war against the American public. I mean, when it comes to the censorship and the I mean, just look at that alone. The willingness to enlist these tech, or to whether they threaten them or they're in bed with them, these tech giants, to suppress people's speech and to essentially just remove the ability to have any real legitimate conversation about politics, or have any rational conversation. I mean, look, again, Donald Trump, I mean, he's a character, but he's not anything what they say. And it's like, we're not dealing in the same realm of reality anymore. And it's like, and I'm sorry, but it is one side. It is not a pox on both your houses. Conservatives and Republicans generally have been just reacting and trying to deal with the fact that the Democrats have become a complete bunch of criminal psychopaths who are ruthlessly trying to destroy the fabric of this country in order to maintain perpetual power for themselves, to the point where they have essentially willing probably to kill Donald Trump if that's what it takes. And
And
certainly,
even some Democrats are figuring that out. Ask any Democrat who tried to primary Joe Biden this year how that worked out. Bobby
no,
Kennedy had to
exactly.
leave the party.
Yeah,
Marianne Williamson had to drop out of the race.
that's I
Dean
mean,
Phillips, God bless you, but
yeah,
buddy.
and that tells you everything you need to know. I think when someone who is a genuine liberal, in the best sense of the word, and has been loyal to his family, are the icons of that party for generations, had to leave the party. I mean, my God, I was like, wow. I mean, I was honestly shocked when he did that. I mean, I was
Yep.
really, I thought I had held out hope that it was the leadership of the party, the people at the top, that these were, it was corrupted, and unfortunately, when you get a cancer like that, it begets itself. It becomes metastatic, and that's clearly what's happened. But I thought, okay, well, he's going to have grassroots people that love the Kennedys, and they're going to rise up. And I guess he realized that no, it's a top-down party, and it doesn't matter what the grassroots wants in the party. I would hope that that's still possible. There are people of good faith enough in the grassroots of that party to who maybe have been misled, or and haven't been
But they're not the ones who have
programmed.
any power
No, no,
in the
that's right.
party
I mean, it's
apparatus.
amazing. The Democratic Party, they call it. It's the Democrat Party because they're hardly democratic with this super delegate nonsense, where even someone who wins all the primaries could be replaced by their super delegates, who are just a bunch of elite so-and-sos who get are handed these powerful positions to determine who gets to be the nominee. And they've, like you said, they didn't. I mean, my God, they had Joe Biden as a write-in in New Hampshire. Was it because they didn't want to actually have a race? In other words, I mean, how twisted is this? I mean, it's bizarre.
Yeah,
And
they literally threatened to take away Kennedy's delegates if he even opened a campaign office or campaigned in New Hampshire, or God forbid, won the New Hampshire primary. So
They're
they
thugs,
really left him no choice but to leave.
But Rick, they're thugs. You're absolutely, and so I mean, Rick, I feel your pain, man. I mean, I had the highest aspirations for a country that lived up to the ideals of, like the Tocqueville vision, the ability of our country to people to coexist peacefully and to hold different viewpoints, and for them to be respected, and that the political process works it out for the best interest of the people. But I mean, every aspect of that has been completely defiled, completely corrupted, and completely spurned by these. I just don't know where they came out of. Is it generational? But no, because I mean, you look at Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, she's just as bad as the worst demagogue from a generation before. And until we dislodge these people and remove them from power and purge for lack of a better term, the government and our civil society in these influential positions, I mean, in judges and all this, until we get rid of these people, and I mean get rid of out of their positions, they're welcome to go and live the high life on their ill-gotten riches or whatever they have you. I wish them health and a long miserable life. But until we get a hold of our system again, it's just going to keep getting worse until the people frankly have to take the 1776 solution.
Well, Tyler, it's been building, as you know, for many years. And for the last several election cycles, more than half of Americans didn't even vote.
Yeah,
right?
and
They
that's a
stayed home
problem
on
too.
election day because they don't believe in the two-party system. And I've been a third-party voter, libertarian for 30 years, and I've just kind of been waiting for everybody else to catch up with me. Now they finally have, and they realize the two-party system's broken. They know they sure as hell don't want another Biden versus Trump race, and that's why I believe Kennedy made the right move by going independent, because for the first time in our entire history, 60% of the electorate doesn't identify as Republican or Democrat. They call themselves independents. Now, whether or not they will vote that way in November, that's another matter. But I wanted to play you a clip. We caught up with Kennedy on the campaign trail.
I would point out just before we
yeah.
do that, look, Trump runs as a Republican, but he's not a conservative, hardcore, rock-ribbed conservative
True.
by any stretch. He's not been a government-cutting, fiscally austere. He really was more like a moderate Democrat for his entire political life until he realized that the Democrats have moved so far left that he could not possibly accommodate being in that party.
That's
so,
right.
what I would say is that Trump, in a sense, is independent of the system. He's not part. I mean, in a true sense, maybe not of the. He has to. He realizes I have to be part of this party. But I mean, look, half the Republicans, well, not half, but I mean, certainly a huge portion of them hate him and are absolutely never Trumpers. So you can't really say that he represents the Republican Party 100%, and it's he's a partisan in that sense. He's not
kind of an old
partisan.
New York Democrat in a lot of ways, and a lot of old school Kennedy Democrats and Reagan Democrats from back in the day voted for Trump in 2016. I'm one of them.
People. He's a working class billionaire, and I mean, it's bizarre to say, but it's true. I mean, he really does, I think, have the best interests of working people, and they love him for it. I mean, that's his constituency, and you see it. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, I had sold a car that I had, just sort of a junker that was sitting out there, and the tow truck driver, he was a Hispanic, Latino, whatever, and he sort of said, I forget how it came up, but he was like, oh yeah, he immediately said, yeah, we're all my whole family, everybody, we're all voting Trump, and I was like, this is like not usual, like you would not hear Republican candidates in the past where the average Latino or Mexican or Hispanic, whatever, would be like, yes, I'm voting Republican. I mean, yes, there were inroads made, but not like where they're openly saying and vigorously saying, I've got everybody in my family voting for Trump now who didn't vote for him before. So
I think the bigger issue here is who's going to vote for Kennedy, because if Kennedy can't win, then it becomes a vote splitting issue. And is he going to pull more from the Democrat side or the Republican side? I have my view. What's yours?
I think that the people. I think that people. It's not a matter of he's going to pull from anybody. It's that the Trump's base, his core voting, it's solidified. People have made up their minds. It's not going to be some like roller coaster. They have been migrating to him and being driven to him over the last 3.5 years. I think instinctively and rightly, people felt that he was cheated, and then thus they were cheated, even if they didn't necessarily vote for him. That people who are not totally out to lunch hating him feel like this was not right. And guess what? The results of that campaign have produced awful. I mean, my God, the Biden administration is a total meltdown. And just the man himself is a meltdown. So I think it's, you have to look at the dynamic that way. It's not a matter of who Bobby Kennedy appeals to. It's that who is solidified the most.
Bobby Kennedy appeals to the people who don't vote, the people who gave up on voting.
Yeah.
I
think I would say this, the Trump supporters, there's plenty of Trump supporters like me who think Bobby Kennedy's great, but we're not going to risk it. We're going with Trump
right.
because, and I think that, again, as I've said before, the only way to vindicate justice and to spurn the horrors that are being done to Trump and people like him, and is to put him back in that office and say.
See, Bannon wanted Kennedy to run because he thinks, I think still, I'm not sure if he still thinks this, but he did think that Kennedy would pull from the Democrat side and help Trump, which is why he wanted him to run. But I think it's the other way around. I think Kennedy appeals more to the Trump voters and not very much to the Democrats.
But
I can tell you, we've got a lot of former Trump voters in our fan base and campaign volunteer
I
base.
wouldn't disagree with that. But I would say for every one of those, there's 5 people who have left the Democrat Party and have said, I didn't vote, but I'm voting for Trump this time. I've heard way more of that than I've heard people saying, well, I'd like to go with Bobby Kennedy. Look, I respect Bobby Kennedy. I really think he'd make a great president. But I think people are looking at this as we're at war. And we can't take the chance on and again, I also think the polling indicates that Kennedy would draw from the Democrat candidate because Biden's so weak at this point. I think that's what I've seen, at least in the polling data. Who's to say, though? I mean, he could just throw it into a situation where there's a belief amongst Trump people that he's doing this in order to have the sort of electoral college thrown into the House because nobody gets a majority. And then, the House would elect the president, and that would be Kennedy. I don't. Maybe that's been gamed out.
I seriously doubt that because Kennedy doesn't have a lot of allies in Congress. If it does go to the House,
I don't know where they got.
I don't think Kennedy would come out the winner.
Well, I think they would say that he's a compromise for people to say we won't. But I don't think I think that's delusional. They're going to do anything they can to get their guy in.
And the thing that's really hurt Kennedy has been the issue in Gaza. And more than any other candidate, he's taken it on the chin unfairly. I don't even understand why. Well, maybe I have theories, but I don't have anything substantive, Fanny, to base my opinion on.
Bringing it full circle. Thank you, Rick.
It is incomprehensible to me why all the people who really were, really supportive of Kennedy running, and then October 7th happens, and then everybody abandons him and demonizes him, and yet every other candidate basically has a similar position. Like, every other candidate supports Israel, but he's the one paying the price.
Yeah.
It's bizarre to me.
Well, because they think he's an apostate somehow. He's supposed to be a progressive liberal who's,
You're supposed to be the anti-war guy, Bobby.
Yeah. And
that's what they say.
I can't explain his position. That's for him to do. But I think ultimately I looked at the sticker over here when it say the nation needs Nixon. Now more than ever. I'm kidding. Nixon's the one. I'm kidding. But I mean, you think about Richard
Actually,
Nixon.
I agree in many respects because I think Richard Nixon's foreign policy was excellent, actually, and his foresight, he knew what was coming. I think, if
we don't have anyone, only Bobby Kennedy really has his level of, in my view.
Yeah, with Russia, freedom really hasn't been after the fall of the Berlin Wall. We didn't take advantage of the opportunity to extend the olive branch and work with Russia, and so now we're paying the consequences of that. And
exactly,
the military-industrial, establishment, intelligence cabal that took Nixon out. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Bob Woodward was not a reporter. He was a naval intelligence officer who worked in the Nixon White House not 2 years before the Watergate break-in. All of the burglars, quote-unquote, were CIA. I mean, come on. Like, let's get real here. Let's not – I mean, the people like, Nick Ackerman and Jill Wine Banks, who made their, who exist as these mythical figures because they were, Watergate prosecutors, they're frauds. They're straight up frauds. And it is the worst. Besides the Warren Commission, frankly, the narrative, the mainstream narrative about Watergate is the biggest fraud on the American people. Again, besides the Warren Commission and the single bullet, Lee Harvey Oswald theory. Which is really just a theory because, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absurd beyond belief. He was an intelligence operative who was framed and murdered to silence him, and it's very sad. But that being said, no, Nixon, I mean, he ended the Vietnam War, and for all the flack he took for having inherited Lyndon Johnson's Vietnam and trying to somewhat, not just have us completely have egg all over our face, he did draw it down. And he certainly, I don't think he didn't initiate any other wars or aggressive moves, and he was trying to promote peace. I mean, that was what he said. The role.
What he did with China was great.
Some people might argue against that today, but I mean, I think it was either have an enemy we know or we don't know, you know, and you're going to be a competitor, if not adversary, for sure.
When I was in elementary school, I said that in class when Watergate was going on. I said, well, at least he's trying to do the thing with China, and, you know, at least, and everybody jumps on me because, of course, they're all getting, you know, their information from the 6 o'clock news. And, and I'm like, whoa, you know, I'm just a kid, but yeah.
That was the birth.
No, you were right, even as a kid, right?
Kind of.
Yeah, no, good
Now
call.
you get the last laugh.
Yeah, it's you know, that was the birth of fake news. That was the birth of the media lynch mob, the propaganda lynch mob that can take out a politician just by beating the drum of whatever they want to beat, no matter whether it's, you know, and it's been deployed against Donald Trump in droves. But Nixon and Nixon was he was an introvert. He didn't you know, he was kind of he didn't have like a naturally like a, I mean, he's the opposite of Kennedy in terms of charisma, John F. Kennedy. So you can imagine, having to run against John F. Kennedy. I mean, you got to give Nixon credit. I mean, I would be
to do as well as he did.
Yeah, no kidding.
No kidding.
Well, that election was stolen too. I hate to say. I mean, Joe Kennedy.
I'm gonna have to disagree, but we'll debate that another time.
I mean, Joe Kennedy made a deal with the devil, and that's you know, it was that close. I think. You know,
speaking of deals with the devil,
and that's no knock on John F. Kennedy. I don't think he was personally involved, or Robert Kennedy, or he wouldn't have gone out and risked. I mean, look, Carlos Marcello. You know, these guys don't like being double crossed, and Joe Kennedy, I think, did that to the family members, and I think they were involved in JFK and RFK's assassination, the mafia, in other words.
Speaking of deals with the devil. You know, there's a lot of talk, and it's been there since the day that Bobby Kennedy entered the race. Your friend Roger Stone, of course, was trying to open a negotiation between the two camps to see if maybe a Trump-Kennedy ticket might happen, which is very intriguing. You know, some people dismiss it immediately out of hand, but Rick and I talked about it like from day one of Kennedy's campaign. The first thing we said was, wrong party, dude, you're in the wrong party. And it took Bobby a while to figure that one out, but he did. And what Rick and I both were saying was that Kennedy would probably do better in the Republican Party. So I want to play you a clip. Bobby was asked about it in an interview recently. What his thoughts are about a Trump-Kennedy ticket. Let's hear what he has to say.
Trump and President Biden among young people. I'm beating them in independence, which is now the largest political party. So I think that probably is concerned to both the DNC and the RNC and their corporate supporters.
Could Robert Kennedy Jr. play spoiler in 2024? That's the concern for some Democrats as the independent presidential candidate pushes for ballot access in all 50 states. Right now, let's look at polling. RFK Jr. does have a decent amount of support, 18%, though former President Trump still has quite the lead over him and, well, President Biden. News Nation's Rich McHugh joins us live from West Virginia. Good morning, Rich. I know you spoke to Kennedy before his rally. What did he have to say?
Hey, good morning, Hannah. And first of all, I want to say congrats. Welcome to News Nation. It's good to have you here.
Thank you so
last night he was here. Bobby Kennedy was here last night campaigning in Charleston, West Virginia. It was a packed crowd. I got a few minutes to catch up with him before the rally. I asked him about the border. Here are some of the headlines. He says Texas and Governor Greg Abbott is in the right. Take a look.
I believe that under the Constitution, that Texas has a right to defend its border. Under Article 4 of the Constitution, the U.S. has the obligation to defend states against invasions by a foreign country. President of the United States, I would be defending it. Texas wouldn't have to do it. So I don't think that would be an issue. The President of the United States should be. This is unsustainable. It's really almost, it's a terrible, it's almost a criminal affront on our country.
He has also shifted his stance a bit on Trump's border wall. He says we need some sort of barrier. I think previously you were opposed to Trump's border wall. Are you now in favor of it in some fashion?
Yeah, I mean, when I went down and saw the border, my mind completely shifted about what's happening down there. And that we don't need a border wall from 2,200 miles from Brownsville, Texas to San Diego. You definitely need a physical barrier in certain parts of the border.
Now, the biggest issue he faces is getting on the ballot in every single state. He's on the ballot in 2 states, New Hampshire and Utah. I'd also asked him about something I'd heard President Trump had called him early on and asked him about being his VP. I asked if it were true. Take a look. If he asked you that today, what would your response be?
I would not take that job. I'm flattered that President Trump would offer it to me, but it's not something that I'm interested in.
Did he reach out, or his team?
People from the team have reached out to me.
Now, I also asked him about media coverage and whether he feels that he's been essentially frozen out of the conversation by the main networks. He says, absolutely, Hannah.
Rich, I've been on the campaign trail. It's very exciting. I am curious, what was the energy like at Kennedy's rally in West Virginia yesterday? Was there a lot of energy? Did people feel like they were looking at their next president?
It was, first of all, it was packed. I mean, this is the country. We're 3 hours from any major city, but it was packed, and there was a lot of cheering and a lot of applause, unprompted. So the people here like him, and there was definitely an energy that was unmistakable, for sure.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
By the way, I just got to say, Kennedy's rallies are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When he was in Arizona and Las Vegas last week, the room was so full that we had about 250 people in an overflow room. And the venues that we're booking for Kennedy literally can't hold him. So it won't be long, I think, before he's filling stadiums, just like President Trump. And I think, Tyler, that Team Trump's getting kind of worried about this guy. They showed a poll with Kennedy at 18%. The latest New York Times, NBC News did a poll last week that had him at 34%. So this is a three-way race. And I know Biden's worried. If I were Trump, I'd be a little concerned. And yeah, it seems to me that the wise thing to do for Trump would be to, if you can't beat him, join him. Bring Bobby onto the ticket. Your thoughts, gentlemen, of a Trump-Kennedy ticket? Tyler, you first.
Well, I would say, first of all, Bobby's not even on the ballot in any state yet. So, that's
two. We got two so
two.
far.
I'm sorry, I stand corrected.
Yeah.
I think his border position is brilliant, and frankly, it's common sense. It shows you that he is not going to take sort of any typical position either way. But I mean, I think he takes the American constitutional position, which is smart. I look. I mean, from the very beginning, when Bobby even mentioned the possibility, immediately I said, "My God, if we could have a Trump-Kennedy ticket." As Roger Stone, we both agreed if that would seal the election right there, and it bothers me that I hate that such a great idea, yet the forces that are in play, Bobby's obviously got to give the answer. He's not going to say, yeah, of course I'd consider that, because that gives up the essence of his campaign. I mean, no presidential candidate's going to say that until he would be willing to. But I mean, I wish they would consider it, and I think it would save this country in so many ways. It would unite so many people behind. It would bring the forces together that essentially agree that what's happening now is not working, and we're going down the road to perdition. And I think Bobby's views are certainly not in any way diametrically opposed on any issue to Donald Trump's positions. So it wouldn't be, and it bothers me that anyone would attack him as though he's just a liberal, he's a leftist, and for things he said in the past. I mean, Donald Trump come on, he donated to Clinton's, and let's get real here. So I think it's foolish of anyone in the Trump camp to attack RFK, and I think I would hope that cooler heads. I mean, I would hope that some miracle would happen where they'd realize that this is the only way we're gonna ensure the future of this country in the hands of people who care about it and aren't just malevolent psychopaths.
What do you think, Rick?
I don't think that he will be the running mate choice. I think his policies in some areas are too progressive, particularly on environmental issues. I think that it's much more likely that Tulsi Gabbard will be the running mate because
For Trump?
for Trump
Bobby?
because for Trump because she's a woman, so she will pull from that demographic for him. I think also if you look at her positions on issues across the board, they're even more in alignment with what Trump believes and what's on his platform. So I think it's more likely to be there. And there's some
She's military as well.
yeah, and so it's just I think too within the camps, the people around Trump, I don't think they're comfortable enough with Kennedy, much more so with somebody like Tulsi Gabbard. And so while I don't have any, inside information, that's my if I had to pick somebody as the likely choice,
It would be a genius move for Trump to bring Tulsi on board. Yeah.
and I think that seals the election as well. Either way, I think it seals the election. But with her, I think she's also probably more compatible in the work environment afterward. She's probably more likely to function better with him in a secondary role than Kennedy would be. I think those two guys might end up, locking horns sometimes.
Right.
But with her, I don't think so. I think she, especially with her military background, would be more disciplined and would be more in control of her emotions.
Well, since you brought up Tulsi,
yeah.
I got to tell you, because I work
Your
with the
mic
Kennedy
is muted,
people.
I think there, Tyler. Couldn't hear you.
Oh, I was just going to say, I wanted to chime in on that a bit. Everyone, we run polls, internal polling with our Kennedy supporters, and everybody wants Tulsi. By a long mile, all of Bobby's supporters say that Tulsi Gabbard would be their first choice for his vice presidential candidate, and they would make a superb ticket together. And I
Trump
know
would
that
really have to worry.
and then Trump would have to worry. But conversely, let's say that Trump gets Tulsi on his ticket, then I'm afraid Bobby would have to worry. That would take a pretty good chunk of Bobby voters, perhaps, away from Kennedy. So that's kind of troubling right now.
So she's the kingmaker.
She is. She's in the catbird seat. I mean, she's got both camps courting her to come on the ticket. And something I wanted to bring up.
May I just say real quick?
Yeah,
that
go ahead, Tyler.
Just seeing Tulsi debate Camel Toe Harris alone would be great.
Yes.
Oh my God! I mean, it would be just
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes. Bring it
delicious
on.
to
Is there
think about.
anybody else that's even in play as a running mate
For Kennedy?
for either of them?
Well, he's talking to Rand Paul.
That I'd be 100% about that, because I only before Trump, becoming a Trump supporter, I was a Rand Paul guy 100%, obviously, and Ron Paul. I think Ben Carson is sort of is a possibility too, because for a number of reasons, and I think he would balance the ticket very nicely in terms of his temperament, and he's a brilliant man, very thoughtful and soft-spoken man, and he's black. I mean, if you want a diversity sort of, for the inclusion of that aspect, rather than just another white male kind of thing, that he would fulfill that.
Seems like, I'll tell you this, Kennedy's two biggest obstacles right now. One is ballot access, obviously. It's so hard when you're an independent candidate. The whole system's rigged against you.
Has he ruled out the libertarian?
Not completely, no.
Okay.
Mm-mm. We're still giving that some due consideration. We'll see what the libertarians think. No one sabotages themselves quite like the Libertarian Party. So Kennedy's probably their best shot in the party's entire history for electoral legitimacy. And they'll probably screw this up.
I always have to say, small L libertarian, small L.
I'm a small L too. But, and the other big obstacle, and it's huge, is no Secret Service protection. The cost of security is just killing our campaign. And, another reason that unfortunately, to even start a petition drive for ballot access, and several states require Kennedy to declare a vice presidential candidate before he's allowed to circulate petitions. So he has to make up his mind quick, like within the next month or so.
That's terrible.
And it is terrible. And one of the obstacles, I think one of the reasons that he hasn't found someone to say yes yet is the question of security. If you are on the ticket with a guy named Kennedy,
you'd be the target.
you're taking a risk.
Sure. Yeah.
And, usually Secret Service would protect both the presidential and the vice presidential candidates and their families. But when you're independent and there's no Secret Service protection, that means that the cost of protecting our vice presidential candidate and their family is going to fall on the campaign.
Yeah.
We have to pay for that.
Which states, if I may ask, require you to declare vice president before you can even
gosh.
circulate?
You would ask me that. I know there's at least, I think, 6 states, maybe more, that require before you can start a petition drive. It's a dumb rule. I don't know why.
No, it's designed obviously to keep independent candidates out of the running.
You got it.
So
question on the bottom of the screen for you guys.
I see that. Yes.
Vivek.
Gosh, in the cabinet, in Trump cabinet.
I don't think Trump trusts him enough to give him the position of running mate.
No. He would definitely not be a running
I think
mate.
Vivek wants it though.
Oh yeah, he
wants it.
Oh, he's a very, very sharp guy, and he's right on point. He's a great speaker. He's very charismatic and very. He's done himself a world of good with the way he handled himself when he ran, and I think that I think he could have anything he wanted. It would be interesting to see him like in the Treasury Department, head that up to stop this globe. What do they call it? This central bank digital currency, and to take on those forces in the Federal Reserve. But because it seems like he's really sharp on the economics. Having created and run a company, and he's got savvy there. But I think he could probably pretty much other than the big positions, write his own ticket. I think maybe the Commerce Department, please. It's a joke. So I think Treasury Department. Maybe. Does he have the economic background? It's a great question, really good question. But I wouldn't begin to know for sure or to say what.
Is Vivek a natural born citizen or not? I don't know.
He
must be.
Thought he was.
No, I think he is. Yeah. I think he is.
I think he's qualified.
I don't know. I know his parents were immigrants.
Yeah,
for
there's
sure.
another person running as an independent, and they're not. And
not
they're
that it matters.
challenging
Because
it.
Kamala Harris isn't. John McCain wasn't. And
questionably Barack Obama too.
Well, I just found in my archives what appears to be a Kenyan birth certificate. That boy, if that was a fake, somebody better. They could be printing money because it was amazingly. It looked totally.
You're
authentic.
racist.
I know. Yes, I am. Okay. My God, give me a break. It's so devoid of meaning. As I represent the first black Secret Service agent who was screwed over by the government by a bunch of racists, and about to enter his claims for. Are
you representing Abraham Bolden?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you talking about Bolden?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Tell me more.
He's hired me to put in claims. For frankly. His entire career that was destroyed, his life was destroyed, and he deserves compensation for that.
Yes, he does.
And he should be restored to the status that was taken from him as a special agent. And
that's great.
Yeah. And I will say the one thing that Joe Biden did that I can say his presidency that is that I absolutely praise him for was to pardon this man, Abraham Bolden, who has been so the miscarriage of justice in that case.
We've been trying to get him a pardon for 20 years.
He's been trying for 50.
Yes.
And Joe Biden did it, and I praise him up and down. I think it was a great thing that he did. But at the same time, here's the key thing is that when he says, having considered the petition for executive clemency, I give a full and unconditional pardon. Abraham Bolden petitioned on the basis of innocence, which means that the president of the United States essentially declared this man was innocent. or we, our position is that he is an innocent man, not, he was remorseful enough to deserve this. And in fact, this month, right now, they just published him as the pardon attorney. The pardon attorney's office spotlighted him, and I'm thinking, well, you know what? You destroyed his life. I mean, he deserves compensation, and God willing, this administration will not try to drag out some litigation for years and act the way they did in the last major litigation involving race and racism, where a class action of black Secret Service agents sued and won, and the Secret Service's actions in that were reprehensible. They covered up, they dragged their feet, and these guys won because they were discriminated against in promotions. And this was in the 1990s. Can you imagine what it was like in 1964?
I've heard the stories.
Yeah. Yeah, so Abraham
and
Bolden,
Trump didn't pardon Abraham Bolden. Bolden did petition Trump. We did try, and we weren't successful. But if we have President Kennedy, I'm sure that he will look after Mr. Bolden because, as you know, Abraham Bolden was the first black agent on the Presidential Secret Service detail, and he was personally chosen by President Kennedy, who met him one day and said, "I want that guy on my Secret Service detail."
Yeah, and he endured real racism. I mean, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the N-word here. Maybe. Look, Harvey Henderson was like in the detail. Said, "You know what, Bolden? You're. I'm going to tell you something. And you listen good. You're a nigger. And you're always be a nigger. You're going to die a nigger." And he had to put up with this. And and then believe me, that was the least of the long knives out for him. When he said that he witnessed misconduct on the presidential detail, drunkenness, and drinking on the job, and carousing with women and using government vehicles to pick up dates, and he saw all this, and he heard the other agents say that nigger lover Kennedy, I will not if it came down to it, I don't know if I'd protect him. In other words, saying they'd let him be assassinated, which is just ridiculous. He endured all this, and he was going to testify to the Warren Commission, and suddenly this spotless agent who is as honest and ethical as the day is long, suddenly he decides he's going to importune some guy he arrested for $50,000 to provide him supposed file that was of no use to this counterfeiter who's already under indictment, who then later said and admitted that he was basically, that there was a setup, and that he was actually offered a deal and perjured himself and admitted this. And the U.S. attorney was called before the appeals court who suborned this perjury, and he took the Fifth Amendment. The prosecutor, and yet this man still had to languish for almost 60 years. And I mean, there's almost no amount that we could ask for, I think, that would sufficiently. He'll never be restored, but at least he'll know that he's been restored in terms of his status with the Secret Service and compensated, and his family. 2 of his children died before he was ever exonerated or was pardoned, and he received that. So it's very. I mean, he's a brave. I mean, the man is. I mean, I have deepest respect for him, and I'm going to do my best. And I hope, if not the Kennedy, the Biden administration, then neither the Kennedy or Trump administration will see this man and his family receive the compensation they deserve for the ordeal they were put through for decades. Time is of the essence. How old is Abraham Bolden now? He just turned 89 on the 19th of last month. Yeah, I thought he was just around 90 years old. He said, hey, I love him. He said, I may only have 20 years left. And I said, I love that spirit, That's so and cool. I don't think he's going to give up the ghost until he's been made whole. And God bless him. He's such a good man. He is such a good man. I'm honored. I can't tell you how honored I was when he contacted me. I love that you're working with him. That's wonderful news. I just hope I can get the job done for him, and that they'll see reason in this matter, because frankly, they have such dirty hands. I just think that if they want to go into it before a jury in Chicago, Illinois, nowadays with Abraham Bolden, I'd take those odds. They maybe end up getting paying out 3 times what we're going to be filing this claim for. So that would make me so happy to finally see justice for Abraham Bolden. I couldn't think of anyone more deserving, and he was obviously railroaded. Anybody who takes a good objective look at the case
can clearly see what happened there.
Oh,
and
it's-
he was
it's-
silenced because he
yeah.
blew the whistle on bad things going on in the Secret Service around the
And-
Kennedy
and-
assassination and other things too.
But also, yeah, he refused to abide the racism, the open racism
right.
that was part of that. You know, he was prickly about that, as he should be. I mean, they would make, you know, racial jokes that were today would be, you'd be drummed out of society, out of everywhere.
Canceled.
Yeah, well, more than canceled. You'd be fired and you'd be
Yep.
disciplined and for, you know, statements. And he said he refused to accept that. He wasn't going to be just like, oh, okay, and go along to be one of the. And I think that you know, that made him an outlier in that very tight and close-knit culture, along with the, you know, the long knives. People are just, it wasn't just jokes. It was animus. It was malicious. And they said, this guy's got to go. And the only way we can knock him out, because he's too clean, is to dirty him up.
That's right. He was too clean. He always lived a clean lifestyle, unlike most of the guys on the Secret Service detail. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke.
And he wasn't
He
going
was in-
to cover
they didn't
up
have
for them either.
anything on him. They had to literally make something up.
Yeah, and he
shut him
wasn't gonna,
up.
He wasn't going to cover up or let it go, you know, when they were out of line. So
Yes.
yeah, that's what they. It was either that or kill him.
And yet here he is, almost 90 years old, and still going and still
Yeah.
fighting.
That's right.
That's what I love about him. And I know we're just about out of time, but I just wanted to say as a final point, I'm not against the idea of a Trump-Kennedy ticket. It would solve a lot of problems for both of them. Okay, I'm a pragmatist.
Yes.
I look at it and I see, for Trump, it would put him over the top for sure. It would just absolutely obliterate Joe Biden. So it's a win for Trump. For Kennedy, it's a win because it solves the problem of trying to get ballot access as an independent candidate, and it solves the Secret Service protection problem. You know, then as a vice presidential candidate, he and his family would then get Secret Service protection for what it's worth. I mean, we were just talking about how badly the Secret Service bungled the Kennedy assassination. But, you know, they have
Worse than
improved a
that.
lot since then. Then again, you know, you saw that incident on the streets of, I think it was D.C. recently, when a car comes careening close to Joe Biden. And you've seen the video of that. The Secret Service was caught completely unaware. It took them at least 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds to push Biden into the car. Had that car been coming their direction, they all would have been killed. I was very sad to see the Secret Service fail in that regard. So maybe they haven't improved that much, or they're just
No,
getting
I mean,
lazy.
All they've done is fatten the they've expanded the number of people and the number of guards. But I mean, if there's breaches, or they're not doing it effectively, what good is it? I mean, all it takes is one
Right.
mistake or one slip up, just like that. And but I would say, just real quick, that I think that a Trump Kennedy ticket would be putting the country's interests ahead of their own in both cases. And I would, I would hope that could happen. It would not be ruled out a category.
Oh, but there's one big obstacle. There's one big problem with that. Bobby's wife said she's going to divorce him if he does that.
Come
I'm
on,
not
Cheryl.
joking.
Really, Cheryl? Really?
Cheryl's like, nope.
TDS, it's real.
Oh, yeah. So I'm afraid that might, otherwise, these two might actually, find a way to work together. But I'm not so sure if
I don't think she
Cheryl could
divorced
handle
him.
4 years in the
Yeah.
White House with Donald Trump in her face every day.
I don't think. I think she'd find him charming if she ever met the man and spent any time with him. He's painted. What's the portrayal of him in probably all the media she reads or does is a complete lunatic caricature. I mean, it's not. He's. By all accounts, he is an extremely polite, respectful, kind man in person. I mean, and is funny and is warm. He's not at all this combative, Biden, on the other hand, oh my God, he's worse behind the scenes than he is in the camera.
And you know from personal experience,
Yeah.
you know of what you speak.
Ask
But
Tara Reid.
the Hollywood crowd used to love Donald Trump before they hated him.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Yeah, it shows you again. It's just these people that there's certain ideological or partisan underpinnings to them that override everything, even the best interest of the country. But I would hope we can have better and more sensical or rational, logical, much less decent people and have those heads prevail. I think
sadly it seems that certainly the last 7 years in Hollywood, your whole career depends on who you voted for.
Yeah.
And if you voted
just
for
even
Trump, you're
breathing
finished.
a word. Oh, I mean, there's people, if you even just say, well, maybe Trump isn't, even just to suggest.
You can't even say that.
No, you can't. I mean, forget being a supporter, you're done. But if you even just not, basically denounce him in the most, vigorous and vicious of terms, you're out. I mean, you're not, and that's cult behavior. I mean, it's a laugh that they think Donald Trump's people are a cult. I mean, come on, get real.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I do. So, Tyler, tell us one more time where people can find you and check out the new Tyler Nixon show.
On X at Real Tyler Nixon, and on True Social, Tyler Nixon ESQ, as in Esquire, and TNTradio.live is where the show airs. It also simulcasts on YouTube and on Rumble. And it's 2 p.m. Eastern time weekdays, and it's an hour long. And it's I always aim to get on the best guests. And again, you and Rick, you guys are welcome, and I'll be reaching out to have you on as I sort of roll through that. I made this master list, and I'm trying to, kind of make it a diverse week each time. But look for me to have you on here soon enough, and I appreciate your having me. It's always a great conversation. I enjoy it's very refreshing, and I come away energized. Thank you.
It's refreshing having you on. You're actually one of my favorite people to have on the show.
Oh,
yes,
thank you.
true.
That's very kind of you. I'm humbled by that, and I appreciate that. No, thank you. And you're likewise. I feel the same way. It's just I really enjoy this. It's not at all we go on for days with it, just the conversation's great. And
I could literally talk to you for 5 hours. And that just feels like we're just getting started. I think this is about our 5th hour. If we factor in last October, we went for 3 hours that night.
Yeah, but we're not, we differ on maybe some of, certain issues, but at the core, I just, I think you're good people, and I think I'm a good person. And it's like, if this could be the conversation in the country, and this type of vibe, then we wouldn't have we would heal the divide. There wouldn't need to be the wounds, and we could move forward in a positive way with a constitutional republic and respect for human and civil rights.
That's right. That's what this country needs. We are strange bedfellows, and we're damn proud of it.
Amen.
And you're delightful. We love you, man. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'd like to thank everyone else out there in internet land, TV land. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you back here next Saturday night, 9 o'clock Eastern. See you then. Till then, peace.
In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.